This happened in 2023. At the time, I was a 26-year-old woman working overnight security at a corporate building in Stamford. It was my first job like that, mostly sitting at a desk and watching cameras. Nothing ever really happened there, which is why this night stuck with me. The corporate HQ wasn't intimidating at night. It was just empty. Glossy floors that reflected every overhead light, a fountain that was shut off, floor-to-ceiling glass that made you feel a little exposed, like you were on display even when no one was around. I'd come from retail and front desk jobs, so my instincts were customer service first. Calm voice, helpful posture, never escalate unless you have to. Security training adds a second layer. Don't break procedure. Don't follow anyone outside. Don't let someone else's emergency become yours. That night was routine. Visitor log open, camera wall glowing softly. I'd already done 2 rounds. Checked the stairwells, the side doors, the loading dock. I was sipping tea that had gone lukewarm and skimming the policy binder because my supervisor loved testing obscure rules. Around 1:30 a.m., movement caught my eye in the glass vestibule. My brain went straight to reflection. Headlights from the street, maybe. Then a woman stepped into view and stopped. She didn't badge in. She didn't knock. She just stood there in the space between the outer doors and the secure lobby. No coat. That was the first thing I noticed. It was cold enough outside that night to sting your face, and she was wearing thin leggings and a sweatshirt. She had a phone in her hand, but the screen was dark. It looked more like something to grip than something she was using. I stood and approached the desk, keeping my tone light. "Hi, can I help you?" She startled, like she hadn't expected me to speak, then leaned toward the glass. "I can't go back out," she said. Her voice was calm enough, but her eyes weren't. They kept flicking toward the street doors, then toward the planter outside, then back to me. "Okay," I said. "Are you here to see someone? Do you have a badge?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I just can't go outside. They're watching." I'd heard strange explanations before. People under stress don't always sound logical. My brain started sorting possibilities. Locked out, confused, scared, intoxicated. "Who's watching?" I asked. She lifted her phone like she might show me something, then lowered it. "If you call anyone," she said, "it'll make it worse." That line landed wrong. "I can call the police," I offered, "or I can get you a ride." "No," she said immediately. "No police, no ride." She looked past me into the empty lobby. "Are you alone tonight?" "There's always someone on call," I said, which was true, but physically, it was just me. She looked back at the glass. "Do you ever step outside to check the loading dock?" The specificity made my shoulders tense up. "Why?" "Because I need you to walk me to the curb," she said, "just for a second. If I leave alone, they'll grab me." That was where my instincts split. Customer service says, help her. Security says, stay where the lights and cameras are. I studied her more carefully. She wasn't crying. She wasn't frantic. She was controlled, and she'd positioned herself close to the inner doors, right near the sensor that would activate them if I buzzed her in. I didn't buzz people in without a badge. Ever. "I'm not going outside," I said gently. "I'm going to call for help." "No," she said, sharper now. "Please don't." Her eyes darted toward the planter outside. I followed her gaze. Something moved in the shadow. Subtle, quick, then still. Not enough to call a person for sure. Enough to register. The air in the lobby felt different after that. The woman watched me watch it, and her expression flickered. Fear, then something flatter. Waiting, like she was listening for a cue. "I'm calling," I said. I picked up the desk phone and dialed 911. As soon as the line rang, her shoulders tightened. When the operator answered and I started giving the address, the woman turned without another word, pushed the outer door open, and stepped outside. No hesitation. No look back. For a second, guilt hit me hard, like I just scared off someone who genuinely needed help. Then I saw her pause on the sidewalk. She didn't walk away. She stood half-turned toward the building, looking toward the planter, waiting. I told the operator what I was seeing. Officers arrived quickly, headlights sweeping across the lot, flashlights cutting through the landscaping. They didn't find anyone. No woman, no second person, just winter grass and shadow. They asked for the footage. I promised to send it. After they left, the lobby felt bigger, too quiet. I pulled up the exterior camera and scrubbed back through the timeline. Right as the woman leaned toward the glass and asked me to step outside, the feed stuttered. Not a full blackout, just a brief digital freeze before snapping back. It could have been nothing. Cameras glitch all the time, but the timing was perfect enough to keep me replaying it. By the end of my shift, I couldn't stop thinking that the point wasn't to hurt me. The point was to see if I would step outside. And I still don't know if she was bait or if she was a warning. I didn't understand until it was already over. Mall security wasn't what I imagined when I started my criminal justice program. I thought it would feel more official. Radios crackling, reports that mattered, some sense that I was stepping into something serious. In reality, my training shift in Peoria in 2022 was mostly long stretches of nothing happening and the kind of boredom that made you second guess every sound. My trainer that night was Rick. Tired eyes, dry humor that never fully landed as a joke. He'd worked mall security long enough that nothing surprised him anymore, which somehow made me more nervous. Before we even left the security office, he pointed at the camera wall and said, "You're going to hear the phrase ghost alarm a lot. It means the sensor trips, nothing's there, and we don't get excited." I laughed, but I was already trying to memorize everything. Radio protocol, report wording, how not to sound unsure. I wanted to do this right. I checked my flashlight, my spare batteries, adjusted my belt like it might magically make me look more competent. After hours, the mall felt wrong in a quiet way. The overhead lights dimmed, but never fully shut off. Store gates were pulled down like metal eyelids. The escalators stood frozen, and every sound echoed a little too long. What really stood out was the glass. Every storefront was a display case, filled with things meant to be seen under bright lights and noise. At night, it felt like walking past exhibits that weren't supposed to be viewed after dark. We'd been on shift maybe an hour when the first motion alert chirped. Rick looked at his handheld. "Kids store," he said, already sounding bored. I checked the camera feed. The hallway outside the store was empty. No movement. No shadows, just polished tile and the closed gate of a brightly colored children's store that looked unsettling without life in it. "Probably air movement," Rick said, "or a bug." "Should we check it?" I asked. He shrugged. "Training moment." We headed down the corridor. The mall felt even bigger once you were inside it, like all the space had been hollowed out. As we walked, I kept noticing things I hadn't before. The smell of cleaner and old popcorn, the hum of lights, how loud my breathing sounded without other people around. When we reached the store, everything looked fine. Gate locked, no damage. Rick swept his flashlight across the metal slats, then up toward the ceiling corner where the sensor was mounted. "Ghost alarm," he said. We turned back. The alert chirped again. Same zone. Rick stopped walking. Back in the office, the camera feed still showed nothing. Empty hallway, identical to before. "They loop sometimes," Rick said, but his voice had lost its easy tone. We went back out. This time, I was paying attention to everything. My shoulders felt tight, like my body knew before my brain did that something wasn't lining up. Halfway down the corridor, the alert chirped again. And then I heard it. Soft footsteps. Just the sound of rubber soles on tile. I stopped. Rick took another step, then noticed and turned. "What?" he asked. "I heard something," I said, immediately worried I sounded ridiculous. We listened. Another step, then nothing. The hallway was empty. No one at either end. The sound felt wrong because it didn't match what I was seeing. Rick lifted his flashlight and scanned ahead. "Probably echo," he said, but he leaned closer to me and added quietly, Don't say anything on the radio yet. That was the first moment I knew he was unsettled too. We kept walking, slower now. And that's when it got worse. We took 2 steps. I heard 2 steps that weren't ours. We stopped. The sound stopped. Rick raised a hand. Hold. We were close enough now to see into the kids' store through the gate. Plush animals sat in neat rows. Tiny shoes lined shelves. A child-sized table with books looked staged, like someone had frozen the place midday. The motion alert chirped again. Rick muttered something under his breath. Then the gate moved, like something brushed against it from the inside. I stepped back without thinking. Rick didn't. He leaned closer, shining his flashlight through the slats. "Anyone in there?" he called. He wasn't playful. There was no answer. The handheld chirped again. "It's inside the store," Rick said, staring at the device. "But the gate's locked," I said. "Yeah." He radioed dispatch, calm and professional, like he was forcing the moment to stay procedural. I watched the back of the store, the stockroom hallway barely visible beyond racks of clothes. It felt like a throat leading somewhere darker. When we pulled the footage later, the hallway looked the same, except I swear there was something just beyond the edge of the light. Not a full person, just a darker vertical shape, like someone had stepped back out of view. Rick didn't say I was wrong. He also didn't confirm it. "Back up," he said. We did. Management arrived. Then police. Flashlight sweeps, doors checked, ceiling tiles inspected. They found nothing. No forced entry. No unlocked doors. The kids' store was exactly how it was supposed to be. Afterward, Rick went back to joking like nothing had happened. "Ghost alarm," he said again. I didn't laugh. A week later, I was doing paperwork when a supervisor came in and saw me staring at the zone map. "Don't worry about that kids' store," he said casually. "It's got history." "What kind of history?" I asked. "There used to be a back service door," he said, already turning away. "They sealed it after incidents." "What incidents?" He pretended not to hear me. It's crazy the way everyone acted like this was normal. Like the mall had places you just didn't talk about. And once you've stood in an empty mall at 2 a.m., listening to footsteps you can't see and watching cameras that don't show what you heard, the word empty stops meaning what you thought it did. I took the water district job because I wanted boring. That's not sarcasm. If you've worked nights long enough, you learn that boring means nothing went wrong. Gates stayed locked, cameras behaved, you went home the same way you arrived. I was 44 in 2016, retired from Bakersfield PD and trying to stay retired. The water treatment facility was ideal for that. 1 guard on site, 1 on call, long, predictable patrol routes, no public access after hours. The place felt abandoned at night. Chain link fences, warning signs, sodium lights that created bright circles on concrete with long stretches of darkness between them. Pumps hummed constantly, like the facility was breathing in its sleep. I worked alone most nights. That was normal. The company called it low risk. I called it pay attention. I kept my routines tight, flashlight always in hand, no headphones, no shortcuts. I changed my route timing just so it wouldn't become predictable. Younger guards thought I was paranoid. I wasn't. I just didn't like surprises. The first time I saw it, I almost dismissed it. It was around 1:30 a.m., doing the east perimeter near the tanks. That stretch had uneven lighting, good coverage in spots, then a dim corridor where your eyes had to adjust. I swept my flashlight along the fence line, checking for damage. The beam caught something right at the edge of its reach. Not a whole person, just the outline of a shoulder and head. A silhouette standing exactly where the light started to fade. Then it stepped back. I stopped walking and held the beam steady on that spot. Nothing moved. No footsteps, no shifting gravel, just the pump hum and my own breathing. I assumed it was a trick of shadow, a post, a weird angle. Your mind starts inventing stuff when you're alone at night. I changed position, swept again from a different angle. Nothing. I finished the patrol, logged no issues, and moved on. You don't write reports based on feelings. 2 hours later, it happened again. This time in a different location, but the same behavior. It was near the chemical storage building, a quiet corner where the motors were farther away. I swung my light toward the fence, and there it was again, the same outline. It withdrew the moment the light touched it. That's when it stopped feeling random. I radioed dispatch, kept my voice neutral, told them I had a possible trespasser, asked them to stand by. I checked the cameras. Grainy, glare heavy, dead zones everywhere. The exact corner I needed was just outside the useful frame. If I hadn't seen it twice with my own eyes, I would have believed the screens. I decided to break my pattern. On the next sweep, I walked faster than usual, then slowed unexpectedly. I doubled back early, cut behind a tank instead of taking the straight path, paused in the dark between light poles and listened. Everything sounded normal, too normal even. At one point, I did something I don't recommend unless you're sure of yourself. I turned off my flashlight, total darkness, just long enough to feel exposed. Then I snapped it back on and aimed straight at the spot where I'd seen it last. The silhouette was there again, closer, still outside the brightest part of the beam, but nearer than before, like it had moved while the light was off. I didn't chase. That's the part people don't expect. But nothing about this felt like someone trying to escape. It felt like someone controlling distance. I called for backup. On-call guard, PD. Remote site meant slow response. While I waited, I kept my light trained on the edge of the darkness. The silhouette didn't rush me. It didn't vanish completely either. It just stayed right where the light stopped, as if it understood the boundary better than I did. Then I heard a sound, a small metallic ping, like a tool slipping against a pipe. That was when I moved. I advanced carefully, beam up, steps measured, rounded the corner expecting to catch someone mid-motion. Nothing. But the ground told a different story. Fine dust along the gravel showed fresh scuffs, marks like someone had been standing in one spot and shifting weight. Backup arrived eventually. Another guard with 2 bright headlights, PD with stronger lights, and polite skepticism. We swept the area, checked gates, fence lines, access roads. No one there, no vehicle, no damage. They suggested it might have been nothing, a homeless person, a trick of light. I didn't argue. You can't debate what you can't prove. In daylight, I noticed something new. On the southeast fence line, 3 zip ties had been added. 2 black, 1 white. Not securing anything, just looped through the chain link at waist height. Maintenance doesn't do that. It looked like a marker. I cut them off and logged it. Supervisor told me I was reading into it. Maybe I was, but I don't think so. I'd learned the hard way that there's no such thing as a quiet night in security. On an auto auction lot, quiet just means the trouble hasn't shown up yet. The lot in Fontana was basically a city made of cars. Rows and rows of vehicles sat under tall light poles. Most nights followed the same rhythm. Perimeter checks, gates, fences, scanning for broken locks or cut wire, resetting whatever sensor decided to misbehave. False alarms were part of the job. Wind, animals, loose hardware. You learned which corners talk too much. Every lot has a noisy corner, the place where the wiring's old or the gate never quite lines up. You learn it like a pothole on a commute. That night in 2019, it was the southeast gate by a shipping container and a chain link fence facing a service road. The sensor there had been annoying for months. Wrong wind direction? Alarm. Heavy truck on the road? Alarm. Sometimes it would chirp once and go quiet again. So when my console flashed southeast gate door alarm, I didn't react emotionally. I grabbed my flashlight, got in the patrol vehicle, and drove over. Driving the lot at night messes with your depth perception. Headlights sweep across windshields and chrome, reflections jumping where nothing actually moves. You pass dozens of cars that feel identical until you're close enough to notice personal details. Papers in cup holders, a kid's car seat, a jacket tossed in the back. At the gate, everything looked fine. I checked the latch, tugged the chain link, reset the sensor, and listened. Nothing but wind and the freeway. I logged it and drove off. 10 minutes later, the alarm hit again. Same gate. I frowned, drove back, checked everything again. Same nothing. Reset, logged, left. 7 minutes later, again. By the third time, it stopped feeling like a glitch. That's when the thought surfaced, unpleasant and simple. It's not an alarm, it's a bell, and it's pulling me into a pattern. I didn't like that I'd become predictable. Someone who wanted access to a site doesn't need to beat you, just redirect you. So instead of driving straight back, I parked 2 rows over, where I had a partial view of the gate through gaps between SUVs. I shut off the engine and the headlights. The lot looked different without my lights. The poles bleached everything evenly. The rows of cars became long corridors of shadow. The auction building sat at the far end, dark except for a few security lights. A minute passed, then another. The alarm stayed quiet. Then it chirped again. I didn't move. I watched. I couldn't see the latch from where I sat, but I could see the area around it. For a moment, I thought I saw something shift near the shipping container. Just a change in the darkness, like someone standing right where the light gave up. Then nothing. What caught my attention wasn't movement near the gate. It was the ground near my patrol vehicle when I looked down. I'd parked on dusty asphalt. Earlier, my own footprints had been clear. Now there were marks that hadn't been there before. I stepped out carefully and crouched. The dust showed looping footprints around my truck. Someone spending time near my vehicle. That's when the night changed for me. While I'd been chasing the alarm, someone had been here, maybe checking doors, maybe looking inside, maybe waiting to see when I'd come back. If the alarm was bait, the gate wasn't the goal. I turned on my flashlight and checked the truck methodically. Handles, windows, tires, undercarriage. I wasn't looking for dramatic sabotage, just small things that would slow me down. Near the driver's side window, there was a faint smear in the dust. I imagined someone leaning in to see the console. My radio crackled and went dead for half a second. It happened sometimes at the edges of the lot, but the timing felt wrong. Then, from somewhere deep between the rows, I heard a car door close. I moved my flashlight down one lane. Chrome, plates, bogged windshields. No movement. Another lane. Same. I backed toward my truck without turning fully away from any direction. Running makes noise. Noise makes mistakes. Then I saw one footprint stopped right at my driver door, pointed inward, like someone planted their foot and leaned in. I got inside, locked the doors, and called law enforcement. Gave the address, explained the repeated alarms and the footprints. While I talked, I watched the mirrors and the lanes between cars, waiting for something to reveal itself. The dispatcher asked if I could see anyone. I said no. That was the worst part. All I had was evidence that someone had been there. When deputies arrived, the lot had gone quiet again. They swept with brighter lights, checked the gate, walked the rows. Nothing. No forced entry. No cut fence. No person. Just prints in dust. One deputy shrugged in that familiar way, like he'd seen 100 nights end like this. He asked if I wanted to file a report anyway, and I did. After they left, I sat in the patrol vehicle and watched the console. The alarm system behaved itself the rest of the night. On paper, nothing happened, but that's not how it felt. It felt like someone learned my routine in real time, like they used the alarm to keep me moving while they stayed close to my truck. After that night, I stopped thinking of alarms as warnings. Sometimes they're just tools. And what stayed with me wasn't fear of an intruder. It was knowing that while I chased a sound, someone stood close enough to look inside my vehicle and patient enough to wait for me to come back. The alarm wasn't the threat. It was the method that kept me away from my own vehicle. If you've never worked nights at a logistics depot, it's hard to explain the kind of quiet it has. It isn't peaceful. It's industrial. Big spaces meant to be loud that suddenly aren't. Rows of trailers sit like dark blocks. Loading bays stay shut. Chain link fences stretch farther than they should, topped with wire that catches moonlight and turns it into a thin silver line. Tucson nights don't cool off much, even after midnight. The place feels busy even when nothing's happening, which messes with your head. Your brain keeps expecting engines, forklifts, voices. Instead, you get silence and the sense that something is missing. I was 45 then, former corrections officer. I wasn't jumpy. If anything, I trusted routine too much. Years inside taught me that panic gets people hurt. Calm keeps you alive. That shift started boring, exactly how you want it. I ran my first loop, checked the gate log, scanned the camera wall. Loading bays, main yard, admin building, and the far fence line behind the last row of trailers. Like every place, there were dead zones, especially along the perimeter where the lights didn't reach evenly. I knew them all, knew where shadows pooled. By 1 a.m., the depot felt closed. No trucks scheduled. Minimal staff. Just me, a supervisor in the office buried in paperwork, and one warehouse guy who might as well not exist unless you went looking for him. I was halfway through another sweep when I saw him. My mind didn't flag him as a person right away, just a shape near the far fence line between trailers and uneven light. Something my mind tried to label as equipment. Then it moved. He wasn't wearing reflective gear. No vest, no badge, just dark clothes that blended in too well. He wasn't walking anywhere either, just standing. I stopped and watched. He turned his head slightly like he'd heard me, even though I wasn't making noise. That was the first thing that bothered me. Not fear, recognition. I'd seen that look before. I keyed my radio. I'm heading to the far fence. You seeing anyone on cameras? Static. Then my supervisor, negative. You got somebody? Possibly. I walked toward him, flashlight down, keeping my tone neutral. Hey, can I help you? He didn't flinch, didn't step back. Lost people usually do one or the other. What's up, he said. This is a secured yard. You work here? Yeah, he said, after a pause. Carrier. Which one? Picking something up in the morning. Nothing about that lined up. No truck at the gate. No badge, no reason to be anywhere near the fence. Let's walk to the office, I said. You can sign in. His expression changed. Nah, I'll come back tomorrow. Then he turned and walked, not toward the gate or the warehouse, but along the fence line into a darker stretch. Stop, I said. He didn't. He didn't run either, just kept walking, calm, like he'd already decided I wouldn't chase him. I followed a few steps, then stopped. Chasing someone alone into dead zones full of metal wasn't smart. I raised my flashlight and swept the fence line. He was gone. Not hiding. Gone. Like he'd stepped into a space I couldn't see. I headed back to reposition the patrol car. Standard move. Change angles, force things into light. I got in, turned the key, dash lights came on, radio chirped. The engine didn't turn over. Not a dead battery. It tried, it just couldn't catch. Like something essential wasn't getting through. I tried again. Same thing. I grabbed the radio. Unit to office. Vehicle's not starting. I had a trespasser near the far fence. My supervisor answered a second later. Normal. Come inside. Lock up. We'll call it in. I looked out through the windshield. The yard felt bigger now. Too many places to stand where you could see someone without being seen. I stepped out of the car. That's when I heard the voice, somewhere among the trailers. You should have stayed inside. Calm, almost conversational. I swept the flashlight. Nothing moved. No footsteps, no laughter. Just that sentence, hanging there. I didn't chase. I didn't respond. Corrections taught me that when someone wants a reaction, giving them one is a mistake. I walked to the office, locked the door, and stood by the camera wall. My supervisor took one look at my face and stopped joking. We watched the feeds. Grainy edges, black dead zones. Every now and then, something shifted just outside usable frame, like a shadow leaning, then pulling back. Law enforcement arrived. They checked the fence, swept the yard, found nothing. Morning came. Maintenance checked the car. Battery was fine, connection solid. Then, someone called out from underneath. Fuel lines damaged, not cut clean through, just enough to fail when needed. Law enforcement documented it as vandalism. Asked if I had suspects. I described the man, calm voice, no badge. They wrote it down like it was routine, but it didn't feel routine because he hadn't threatened me, hadn't run, hadn't rushed. He just made a decision. The car didn't fail. It was shut down on purpose. And that's what stayed with me. Not the breakdown, but realizing someone decided exactly when I was allowed to leave. If you also thought the worst part wasn't the intruders, but realizing you were the only line of defense, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me which moment you wouldn't want to face alone. And if you think New Year's Eve is about fresh starts and good vibes, you definitely haven't watched this channel enough. Click now to watch 4 disturbing New Year's Eve horror stories, because some people use celebrations as cover. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.